This week on Serenbe Stories, we are talking with classically trained musicians Faith McCoy Scriven and James Austin Smith. Together, Faith and James have brought Tertulia Chamber music to Serenbe. This intimate dinner series combines many of our favorite things: great food and wine, great conversation, and of course, beautiful music. In this episode, we chat about what brought Faith and her husband to Serenbe, what differentiates chamber music from other types of performances, and which classical pieces James and Faith are most drawn to. Take a listen.
The thing is that what we do is entirely human. This thing we do that we practice every day, it's a human endeavor. And it's not only human, it's not only for us, but of course it's for people that we want to reach. So a lot of what we do at Tertulia is about transmitting that humanness, that humanity in what we do to our fellow people.
Welcome, Faith, James, and as always, Steve Nygren.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be there.
Good to be here.
Looking forward to the conversation with the two of you. I mean, if our listeners could only see the huge smiles on both of your face, and that's just not for this podcast. Every time I see either of you, and of course it's generally around one of the music events, you both are just full of smiles, and that's just part of the delight of talking with you and knowing the two of you.
Fantastic.
Steve, I'd be smiling even broader if I were actually in Serenbe right now.
Well, let's do something about that, huh?
Well, you'll be back. We're recording here in August, and James will be back in Serenbe in September, and I know December, and we'll talk a little bit about those events coming up. But I know James is in Holland right now, and so maybe we'll hear about what's going on there. But besides saying thank you for joining both of us and giving us your time, I really want to start with Faith as a resident. We always ask, what is your Serenbe story? What prompted you and your family to make the move?
Yes, Monica, great question. So we first visited Serenbe. It had to be end of 2015, early 2016. I can definitely confirm that it got dark very early. So the time change hadn't happened yet, or had happened. So anyways, Patterson was probably a year and a half, and we just moved here from California. And we were looking for a little quick one-night escape. And Tyler found Serenbe. And so we came down here, we left Patterson with the sitter. And honestly, we were just so excited to be free. We went to the general store, we bought some wine and some cheese and all that great stuff. And we took it back to our cottage at the inn. And we ended up hanging out there, fell asleep early, and woke up around probably 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And we were like, oh, we need some dinner. And we call at the time, it's just the farmhouse and it's just the hill. We call them trying to see if we can get a table, somewhere to have dinner. And they're completely booked. And so we're like, we're in the middle of nowhere. What are we going to do? The one place that delivers to Serenbe, which we found out, was Domino's Pizza.
I was going to say, I know that place.
So our first night at Serenbe, we had Domino's Pizza. And I remember waking up the next morning, Tyler, what is this place? I mean, what's going on here? There's nothing going on. And we ended up driving around the golf cart, and that was so beautiful. And Tyler's like, we've got to give it another try. We didn't plan appropriately. We've got to get the full experience. So we ended up coming back to Serenbe again. And it just went from there. First, it was a night, 2 nights. Then we were here for 2 weeks, and then 2 months. Yeah. And now we're almost done with our house, and we're super excited.
I love it. Yeah. Domino's, maybe not our best asset, but it does deliver if you need pizza.
There's a lot more options now.
Exactly. There's a lot more options now. And that's the exciting thing about Serenbe is there's always something new coming. So James, I know that you're not a resident yet, but tell us how you came to Serenbe, how maybe you know Faith, and then we can dig into what you guys are doing together here.
I'm a chamber musician. I'm an oboe player, and I live in New York, and I teach and I play, and I go around the country and around the world playing. And I've run this series, Tertulia, that we're going to talk about for the last few years. And my training started at Northwestern University in 2001, where down the hall from me in the dorm...
James, no dates.
We are all eternally youthful.
Down the hall from me, living in the dorm, literally on the same hall, was a pianist named Faith. And Faith and I I think from the very beginning got on like a house on fire. I think you'd safe to say. And somehow I don't have a lot of friends. Most of my friends are from high school or even earlier. I don't have a lot of friends from college, but somehow Faith and I over the years have just stayed close in some way. And, in that way that longtime friends, you stay close and then you don't see each other for a while. And then you see each other quite a lot because life brings you together in certain ways. So my introduction to Serenbe is, of course, entirely through Faith. And the thing that happened was Tertulia was founded in New York. I should maybe explain kind of what we do to the listeners who haven't been to Tertulia yet. So briefly, the idea is that you come for dinner and you have, say, a 3 or 4, at the Okram, it's often 4-course dinner. And in between the courses of music, we serve you courses of food. We serve you courses of music. And the idea is that you get these kind of digestible chunks of listening. And the listening is really serious. So there's absolute silence. There's no service. No one's coming to top up your drink. It's really a concert. I often say we turn it into the most intimate concert hall we can imagine. But that happens for 15 or 20 minutes. And then, of course, you get, say, your main course. And so what you have built in is this time for really focused, really inquisitive listening, and then time to talk about it or to not talk about it and talk about something entirely different. But you have these moments of focus and then moments of relaxation. And the idea should be that each one enhances the other, that your listening is the better because you have the relaxation, and that your relaxation is better because you've just spent 20 minutes listening to glorious music. So that's kind of the way Tertulia works. And we decided in about 2015 to start doing Tertulia in San Francisco. And there were a bunch of reasons for that. It doesn't really matter, but we just wanted to, and we like San Francisco. And it had the side benefit of me knowing that my friend Faith was at the time living in Menlo Park in Silicon Valley. So I said, Faith, come up and see Tertulia. It'd be great to see you. Come up, see Tertulia. And that was that. And we had a great time that night. And it was a wonderful evening in San Francisco at a lovely restaurant called Town Hall. The years go by, and Faith has always talked about how much she loves Tertulia, and she said, well, let's bring it to Atlanta. And I'm like, I don't really know how that's going to happen or where or why. And then Faith says, where it really needs to come is Serenbe. And I'm like, you're explaining this place to me, and I do not really understand what it is. And I don't know why Tertulia goes there. And then finally, it was in August of last year, just about this time last year, that Faith emailed me and said, this is serious. We're doing this. And I was like, okay, I'm listening. And then I was like, fine, I'm coming. And so I had a day before I had to fly somewhere that evening. And so I'm like, all right, I'm coming. So I got on a plane in the morning from New York, flew down to Atlanta. Faith picks me up and we drive to Serenbe, where we meet a bunch of people who, we met a number of people who were going to be involved in this project. And we tool around in the car and look around at all the different places. And I was like, Oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. And 3 months later, we had presented our first Tertulia at Serenbe. So it's pretty amazing trajectory there.
And it was so fabulous with total sellout and smiles on everyone's face.
Yeah, I think people didn't know what to expect, but they were blown away. So blown away. And since then, you have done how many at Serenbe?
We were there last December, and then we've been there in March and in June, and now we have 2 more coming up this year.
Great. Yeah, we have September and December. So depending on when you're listening to this, we'll put that in the show notes. And if you happen to be listening to it a year from now, I'm sure the series will come back in 2023. So both of you went to school for music. So I'm going to just guess that had been in your lives for a number of years. You don't just show up at college and pick up an instrument. And so you guys met, you both went on your way, you continued on with the oboe. Tell us a little bit about that, James. What's that been like? Did you know you wanted to be a professional musician your whole life, or?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, I knew I always loved music, but I had lots of other interests, and what we say to a lot of young musicians is if you love anything else, you should probably do that and not be a musician. And that's because it takes a lot of dedication, right? And you do have to really feel it and love it. And so I wasn't always clear to me that I was going to be a musician. And sometimes I say, I'm not sure I will always be a musician, because we have to follow the things that really light us up every morning. And for now, that's surely what I do with music. But yeah, left Northwestern, studied in Germany for a year, and then came back to the States, did my master's, as you mentioned, and have been living in New York ever since, living this sort of unusual for oboe players, let's say, life of a chamber musician, and chamber music basically is always small groups of musicians, say 2 to about 8 players. There's never a conductor. And it's all about, if you can imagine, it's basically a meeting, because your rehearsing is like a meeting. Let's say you've got 5 people in the room and you've got to sort something out. You've got to come to an agreement, a conclusion about whatever it is that you're trying to figure out. The difference being, of course, then you present your meeting to 100 or 1,000 people. So it kind of calls for that kind of collaboration. It calls for that openness. It calls for that listening. It calls for leading when the time is right, sitting back and following when the time is right. It's a real kind of conversation. And that's really what has always attracted me to chamber music. And it's why it's my life. And the only other thing I'll say about it is you can imagine quickly you build a sense of community amongst the musicians. And because chamber music is so intimate, it's typically presented in small spaces. So that community extends beyond the stage to the audience. Or in the case of Tertulia, there's no stage. It just extends to the 4 corners of the room. And so that, for me, making music in a communal atmosphere where everyone in the room is a part of that process is really, really powerful.
I love that. And I'm glad that you've defined chamber music, because I'm sure that connotates a lot of different things in people's heads and they're not sure what that means. Can you give us some example of some of the pieces that you play that a more general public would understand? Because chamber music, I think what you've defined here is really interesting with these smaller groups and limited players, no conductor, but that doesn't mean that it's chamber music always.
We can let's talk about what we have coming up in September, December, because it's a really good contrast. In September, we have a really intimate program. So it's going to be a set of violin sonatas, meaning violin and piano, and oboe sonatas, oboe and piano. So it might something you might call almost like a recital, like a small scale collaboration that, in a way, if it's done right, is even, of course, more intimate, right? Because you just are watching 2 people having a conversation. That's one version of chamber music. But then in December, we're going 180 degrees the other way. We're bringing in 8 musicians to perform Vivaldi's 4 Seasons. Right.
Okay.
So these are pieces that we know in some way. Everyone knows in some way one of the melodies from the 4 Seasons because they've heard it on a commercial or at the grocery store or wherever it might be. This is really iconic music. So you imagine the skills that you need to bring 8 people together into the same musical purpose, to have the same musical goals, are a little different than, say, just 2 people. But the idea is, like, maybe writ large, chamber music was written literally for a chamber, for a room. So when we are in the Oak Room at the inn, and there's, let's say in the room, 75 people total or 80 people total, we are doing chamber music old school. We are doing it the way it was meant to be. And it's the way that it shines.
Oh, so cool. Love everything you're saying, because it's so fun to hear somebody really explain it. And sometimes you feel, or I'll speak for myself, dumb that I'm like, I don't know really what the difference is. Is it classical? Is it chamber? Like I thought it was, so I love that you're explaining it to me and to the listeners, because I think then it becomes more accessible, right? Because sometimes we think, I don't know anything about it, so how could I go? So Faith, what's going on in your world with piano? Are you still playing? You're teaching, but you've done so many things since then.
Yes, I have done a number of things since then. But, one thing that has always been consistent for me is teaching. It's something that I love. I always joke, if there's something I could do all day, every day, and for free, it would be teaching the piano. There's something about it, and there's no particular age or level that I favor or am keen to, but there's just something about seeing their eyes open when they get it, whether it's the simplest reading something on the staff or memorizing a piece or playing chamber music, and just how everyone learns differently. So it's something I always, no matter what I've done, whether it's executive recruiting or running True Glory or any of that great stuff, I always teach.
Love that.
Quite a bit.
It sounds like you got involved with Tertulia because it was in San Francisco. And then it was, I'm going to just think like a magical experience, and you love James. And so you're like, we must do more, come to Serenbe. So who did you have to convince to get them to come to Serenbe? What was the process? Like, how did that happen? Why? Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
I've always been, I'd say, relatively active as far as listening to all kinds of music, but I'm always going to have season tickets to the symphony or whatever it is. And I still remember the first time I went to Tertulia, what was so amazing to me and what really blew me away was the intimacy of it. You know, when you're sitting in a large hall with 40 musicians, binoculars view away from you, it's very different than being in this intimate space. And not only, yes, the acoustics are fantastic in either location, but really seeing the cues and listening to the music and seeing them all work together is something very special that I think everyone should experience, whether you're a musician or not. I mean, even my husband, he's not a musician, but he immediately got the magic of it when he went to his first Tertulia. I saw them in San Francisco, ended up coming to New York a couple of times and seeing them. And so when we got to Atlanta, I was like, I've been to several concerts here, but I'm like, we're missing this. We need this. And then once we came to Serenbe, it seemed like this perfect place for it. The artistry, the nature, just all of it. It just seemed like it melded so well together. And, you know, as James had said, you know, I've been talking to him about bringing Tertulia here for several years. And it was always, oh, okay, we'll see. You know. But yeah, everything is aligned very beautifully. Once I got involved with Art Farm at Serenbe and programming, and it was just like, this is the time is right. Let's do this. And yeah, and it was, I mean, literally James had a couple of hours to stop through, and he met Garney, he met Janice, and the magic happened.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you need. And so James, you and Faith have sort of come together and said, I think it's about 4 times a year, almost quarterly, that you guys are in Serenbe. Will you continue to expand the number of concerts, or is 4 good? Do you want to expand cities? Like, what's the plan with Tertulia in general?
The thing I have to say that struck me when I came for the afternoon and with Faith and met with Janice and Garney, it was 2 things. It was an openness and a feeling of, we want to create something really culturally rewarding and exciting here. And we are kind of really open to talking about how we enliven this place through this place, using all of the wonderful spots at Serenbe with music, right? And the other thing, so it was the openness, and it was also the thoughtfulness. And I think anyone who can come to Serenbe and say, wow, this is a nice place, right? Like, I mean, sure, it's a very nice place. But there's a certain deeper level of thoughtfulness that has, first of all, gone into Serenbe. And I think it's something that rewards the people who visit and live there, because you're thinking more deeply about your environment. You're thinking more deeply about the way that people interact with each other, that you interact with your neighbors, and perhaps even, of course, then onto things like food, how you eat, and where your food comes from, or mental health or physical well-being. That all of that sort of fosters a kind of thoughtfulness. And it's that kind of thoughtfulness that is so rewarded with an art form like chamber music. You don't need to know anything about the music that you're about to hear, but you do need to approach it with a certain amount of care and a certain willingness to be open and to listen and to digest. And so I think that's what's so beautiful about, so look, it all sounds so logical and reasonable, but I mean, look at our world around us. These places are few and far between. And so to bring the art form and the way in which we presented at Tertulia to a community that is just ready to dig in, literally, is just such a special relationship, such a special match. So to answer your question, you know, this is my long answer to your short question. I think what we're doing is we're looking for ways, we structure these visits as residencies. So we come for 4 days. We try to really fill the community with music. And we are looking for ways to deepen and broaden those residencies so that we look for more places in the community, or that we reach new audiences in the community that we haven't reached yet through Tertulia, that we create more unique experiences with music. In September, we're going to have a sunset serenade where we're going to hear a really extraordinary violinist, Kristen Lee, perform solo as the sun sets. It's something that we can only cook up at Serenbe. We don't cook this up in Manhattan. It's not like we find a place where we can put a solo violin. I mean, think about, like, you wouldn't even be able to hear her. So these are the kind of things that we're doing with our visits and that we're going to keep doing.
I love that. Tell us a little bit more. And I don't know if Faith, you want to jump in. There's a really cute one, or the name I particularly love. I think it's Cupcakes and Concerts, or Concert and Cupcakes, yes. Because you are trying to expand access. And so tell us a little bit about that. And I feel like you're doing maybe another event in a smaller venue. Is it at the Daisy or Halsa? Maybe some stuff on the streets. Talk to us a little bit, whoever wants to jump in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, James, go for it. But yeah, lots of fun programming while they're here, their residents.
Yeah. So we've done, over the past couple of visits, we have done some pop-ups where we've brought some musicians to, say, in front of the general store, and all of a sudden there's a little surprise concert, a 10-minute or 15-minute concert. We did that next to the Daisy as well one time. We had every intention of doing that in June, and then it was about 1,000 degrees outside, so we decided that was maybe not the best idea. But then the cupcake concerts are just absolutely key because they are geared, I'd say, nominally towards younger people, but they are for everyone, of course, and especially those younger people's parents. And the idea is to simply present. We have spent a long time in classical music building up walls. We stand on stage. We wear tuxedos. Sometimes this summer I wore dinner jackets. We put up a lot of walls. And the thing is that what we do is entirely human. This thing we do that we practice every day, it's a human endeavor. And it's not only human, it's not only for us, but of course it's for people that we want to reach. So a lot of what we do at Tertulia is about transmitting that humanness, that humanity in what we do to our fellow people so that they can experience it in the way that we do as well. So cupcake concerts are a perfect example of that. We set up little pillows on the floor, and there are benches in the back, and we introduce ourselves and we introduce our instruments and talk a little bit about why we play them. And then we play a little something each individually. We might play something together. So it's kind of a way of showing that what we do is totally normal, actually. And maybe to some of the young people in the room, maybe it's something they might want to do too. So that's the idea behind the cupcake concert. The last thing that you mentioned, the happy hours, that we've done both at the Daisy and at Halsa. And that's where we do what's basically a wine tasting and a music tasting. So you typically have a sparkling, a white, and a red, or maybe a rosé thrown in there. And we pair very brief, let's say, 1 minute to 5 minute pieces of music with wines so that you get kind of a bite-sized concert. Or put differently, you get a kind of drinking playlist.
I like that.
Great description, James. Great description.
Yeah. And we're talking intimate in the Oak Room with 75 or 80 people. At Halsa, we do it for about 40. So it's really up close and personal. And there we get to talk a little bit more about who we are and what we do as musicians. So that's been really, really special in my memory. The sun setting on the side of Halsa with the light streaming in through the windows and just glorious music and a glass of wine. I don't know what else you could want in life. That's just sounds perfect.
Sounds good.
It's for those people who are passionate about wine, food, music, the whole thing. So that's what Serenbe sets the table for. You are doing such a service. And I think about the last dinner concert at Serenbe, and Monica had invited someone from the press who reviews art, and she was seated next to me across from Faith. And before it all started, she said, well, tell me what's special about this. Why are you excited about it? And I tried to frame it. I said, finally, you're just going to have to listen, because I could tell she wasn't quite capturing. And so, of course, you came on with the first set, and I turned to her when you finished, and I said, now what do you think? And she said, oh, my God. It's like having movie stars in your living room. She said, it's so intimate. And she got it just right there, first set. And that's what you're doing, and bringing people from all sorts. I'm certainly not that music person. In fact, my grandmother complained I had a deaf ear. And I'm just mesmerized by all your performances. And it's not only the music, how you present it, the intimacy, and how you tell the story, James. You are a magical storyteller.
Thanks, Steve. I will just add to that, the other aspect of this is that Serenbe is a community of quality. It's what you eat. It's about how you live. It's about how your surroundings are, as I was saying before. And so one thing that was very important, it's very important to us at Tertulia, and of course it's important to Faith and to me, is that we bring the best. We bring the best artists to Serenbe, because it doesn't matter if you don't know anything about music. When it's outstanding, you can tell that it's outstanding.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Mm-hmm. When you're curating a Tertulia dinner, are they typically the same musicians, or do you curate different musicians? Do you always play? And are you thinking of expanding to other cities? So it's sort of a three-parter.
Yeah. So it's not always the same musicians. And sometimes it's a preformed group, like say a preformed string quartet that plays together all the time. And sometimes it's bringing friends from all over, old and new, together. And that's a particularly fun thing to do at Serenbe, because you get to I always get so excited when I say, look, just trust me, just come to this place. You are going to be so happy you came. And then we get to spend a couple of days rehearsing together, and then, of course, sharing the fruits of our kind of work with the Serenbe community. I don't always play, but I do always host, because that to me is something, it's really important that we build a certain kind of, we build comfort into the model, right? Into the way we present our concerts. We want people to feel comfortable, even if they've never heard a note of classical music before. And part of it is also seeing a familiar face and having someone who's there to say, here we go. Tonight's the night. This is the one. So that's kind of the way it works in terms of, and I will say, then we do like to bring people back now and again. So someone remember, I heard that bassoon player last, I met that guy, or I met that girl, or whatever. It's nice to see people that you recognize. In terms of expansion, we present Tertulia in New York, and we present it in San Francisco, and we present in Serenbe, and there are, I don't know, Faith, how would I put this? There's some irons in the fire. There's some plans here and there. But in a way, what has been such a blessing about being at Serenbe is that we're kind of learning what is the most effective best practices. Serenbe is this place where we get to experiment, and we get to see what really touches people, and then maybe what doesn't speak to people in a way that we wanted to. So I would say our focus is on what we're doing right now in all three of our geographies. At the same time, kind of keeping an eye out for maybe where else is there a special connection to a community. The music, we talk about the way it has to come full circle. Like the musicians, the community has to be enriched by the music making and by the artists. And at the same time, the artists have to be enriched by the community that they're playing for, that they're playing with. And so there you have a perfect example at Serenbe. And where else maybe is that possible? That's kind of what we have our eyes on.
I love that you brought up the, what I'll call artist alumni, or over the years that happens. And it really is wonderful, because it's not just you're in and out for this event and you're presenting, which is incredible, but you're really forming and forging new relationships and new connections. And the residents are enriched so much, not just from the experience of hearing the music, but meeting the musicians and then calling them friends, and then maybe going to see one in New York, that they are compelled to carry that on. And then to your point, having the musicians come back, it's like an alumni, they're part of the community now. One of the questions I wanted to ask both of you, because you're both classically trained musicians, is do you each have a favorite piece of music to perform? I know that's probably a big question. Or a piece that has really speaks to you, perhaps what you played in Carnegie Hall, Faith, or the first thing you learned, or the first thing you mastered. Do you have a piece of music that you want to tell us about?
Ooh, that's tough.
Save the hard one for last.
As far as performing and playing, I definitely enjoy most probably sort of romantic composers, your Rachmaninoffs, your Chopins. But, be perfectly honest, I just bought tickets to see the Brahms Requiem in January, which is completely different, much bigger. So all kinds of great stuff, unfortunately. But that's what I would say. If I sat down right now just to relax on the piano, I would probably play some Chopin preludes or some Brahms or something along those lines.
One of the best parts of my job with Tertulia is that not only do I put together who's going to play, but I put together the program, what they're going to play, what our audiences are going to hear. And that is both let's say, a generous job because I get to literally give music to people, but it's also a super selfish job because I get to choose what I'm going to listen to when I'm sitting there with everyone. So I have pieces, for example, I deeply love the music of Maurice Ravel. We heard some Ravel in June. We will surely hear Ravel again. It's the most evocative music to listen to. Romantic, still romantic era, but French romantic. So it has that kind of, it has a perfumed quality to it. But if I'm talking about the music that I love to play, that would be the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And that is because Bach had a very special way of writing for my instrument. He didn't play the oboe, but he somehow knew everything about it. And he knew how to make it sing, and he knew how to make it dance, and he knew how to make it in a way kind of weep or cry. So I think that, and I was very fortunate here in Holland to have the experience I think it was on Friday night last week, to play some Bach arias with a wonderful soprano and a wonderful violinist and harpsichord. And it just, it's the kind of thing, it just feeds you in a way. So hopefully we'll have some Bach at Serenbe sometime soon as well. And I think I can probably assure you that I will be playing on that concert.
There you go. As we wrap up, this has been delightful. And both of you are such wonderful storytellers about and just explaining the Tertulia. I really, really appreciate it. It's really, really helpful for me to understand it better and the beautiful work that goes into it. One of the last questions we always ask on the podcast is, and I'll put it out for both of you guys, is what's the one thing that if you were going to recommend to somebody, and Faith, you've spent more time here, but James, you're getting close, to somebody who hasn't been here before, what would you suggest that they do while they're at Serenbe?
There are so many things, hikes, the Daisy, dinner at the farmhouse or the hill. I think if I had to be selfishly biased, I would say any and all events produced by Art Farm at Serenbe, just because there's such a range of amazing things, theater, dance, obviously Tertulia is just a range of programming, I think, that any and all visitors can enjoy.
James, do you have something that you like or that you hear from your musicians even that they're like, oh, that was the thing?
Yeah. Okay. So of course, my first answer is Tertulia at Serenbe. Gotta make it. Gotta come.
Of course.
I think from my musicians, I think they just so enjoy the way their blood pressure drops. They arrive and they don't really know where they've landed, but they can tell that, and we always start the week with a lunch at Halsa, hopefully outside. Everyone just kind of, they've come from New York or LA or Chicago, or they all just kind of like chill out. And I think they carry that with them through the whole week. For me personally, as you can imagine, there's always a lot of details to tend to. Faith knows that intimately for a Tertulia week. And the great team at Art Farm, of course, is also on the ball and helping keep everything running smoothly. But I am often up quite early when I'm at Serenbe, making sure everything's just sorted out and ready to go for the day. And so I particularly love early mornings at Serenbe. Say if you're in the golf cart at 7 or 7:30 and maybe there's still some haze over some of the fields, maybe the air is kind of cool, I'll typically head over to the Daisy and sit outside with a cup of coffee trying to wake up, hoping that no one recognizes me in my disheveled state. And I just kind of love watching the interactions between the folks who live there and work there and are visiting, because I think there's a really special sense of community that you can witness and kind of amazingly be a part of. That's just really a gift.
I thank you guys so much for your time. And is there anything that I can plug? Go buy True Glory and go buy tickets to Tertulia. Can we follow you guys on Instagram, or do you do social? How can we support you? I know.
Yes.
I love it. That was good.
I got to give a shout out for.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah. Just check out the Art Farm at Serenbe website.
Absolutely.
We're getting ready to release our 2023 calendar of events, hopefully in the next 6 weeks or so.
Wow. Exciting.
We will have Tertulia events at Serenbe from September 22nd to 24th.
Great.
And then again from December 8th until December 10th. So 2 chances there. Events that are anywhere from our sort of signature wine dinner to the more intimate happy hour to free events like the cupcake concert or the sunset serenade that we talked about. So we're really trying to create a really diverse offering of musical experiences. And yes, you can follow us at Tertulia Chamber Music on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you are in New York, we actually round out our Serenbe weeks in New York. So we'll be on September 25th in New York, on December 11th in New York, and in between in San Francisco on October 21st.
Good. I'm going to have to spread the word to all of my relatives and friends in both those cities because it sounds like a not to be missed event.
Absolutely. And maybe I can just say how grateful I am to all of you and to Faith, especially for making this connection and caring so much about it. You know, Faith, it's a service to Tertulia, but it's a service to Serenbe too, that you have sort of brought us all together. So I'm grateful for the community. Really can't wait to be back with you all.
We're looking forward to your visit, and Faith, just thank you so much. I mean, what you're bringing to us through the music group in the Art Farm is incredible. And of course, James is a great experience, and everyone who brings it. And as we were talking, I have a fantasy for 2024.
Tell us more. Tell us.
Wouldn't it be incredible to bring a joint concert with Tertulia and Terminus? So let's figure out for James to come in during the Terminus production and vice versa. Let's make sure that some of those Terminus folks comes to one of the future events. And
I love it.
We start creating unique experiences that happen here.
I know. I love it. I'm all about the collaboration.
That's beautiful. James, have you met John Welker before?
I have not. No, but I've heard about Terminus.
You two would be
Soul Brothers, right, Monica?
Yeah, totally. Brilliant idea, Steve. I love it.
I love it.
With Faith, the guiding cord. I can just see this all now, right?
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you all again. And we look forward to seeing you at the next concert.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.